Welcome to the Cryptozoology Show with your host, the Cryptozoologist. And this episodes here, we're going to have updates on Trudeau conspiracies, unicorns and mermaids, and some funny local little-known cryptids. This episode will feature an exclusive, the one and only Ottawa River's halalness monster. So it's just, we're going to have a few laughs here and talk a little bit about mermaids and some updates on unicorns and stuff like that. And then the next show will be about dragons and Sasquatch and some other different things like this. This one's a bit of a smaller one probably, but we have one of our viewers there, Jean-Guy, sent in. We were joking about this, sort of low sort of stuff here with these giant bats around, but he claims that there's evidence of this, so let's look at this next here. So it was Junkie sent in this report to be an authentic photo showing that possibly Trudeau and his halal gang here actually may have a bat halal barbecues. So you can see this monster here, and that may be Trudeau way in the far back there, sort of like this. You can see one of Trudeau's extremely large reapers coming out of the giant bat monster's sort of mouth here, and these seemingly jihadist-looking characters all around him and stuff like this. This reported giant bat monster was subdued behind the Parliament buildings, leaving a secret bat cave that Trudeau may be smuggled out of in the area. So, and this is apparently when they're having these secret Bloc Halal Quebec OC Transpo Poutine Qua meetings in the woods, right? So it's a bit of mixture of different groups out there, and they've all got together, and supposedly Trudeau may have this new halal-like cult here. Certain stuff like this. So witnesses said that they were observed in the back of these Parliament buildings smoking tons of cannabis in a Labatt 50-looking booze bongs, or it was possibly a giant hookahs screaming Najaji or something, right? So nobody knows what that was about. And the poor creature apparently was flying by these deadly fumes, and the smoke knocked it out, and it fell to the ground. Then these jihadists reportedly sadly subdued the creature with a silver axe dripping in a halal poutine sauce. So there's the big creature there. You can see him up above, and there may be Trudeau's 8-man warriors. I'm not sure here or who these guys were, or this Bloc Poutine Quebecois sort of group here. So Trudeau reportedly has changed halal practices in some areas to also make the creature smoke weed at first, and he based it in a secret Labatt 50 sauce along with a secret Najaji sauce. So there you go. I mean, so it sounds pretty good. Along with a final dip coating of La Pepsi and La Pogo batter to make it finger halal looking good. So there you have it. So halal fried bats in your neighborhood. Colonel Trudeau and his halal gang make it finger looking good there. So anyways, thank you again, Jean-Guy there. So Jean-Guy's keep an eye out on this Trudeau, and so there you have it. So this may be what's going on in the back of our Parliament buildings. These four rare bat monster creatures are out there, and they're being attacked by these jihadist anti-Anglos. So anyways, we'll move along. All kidding aside, pretty entertaining though. Anyways, we love the picture, great stuff. Now, here's this next other odd waterland cryptids sort of thing. So this time on this episode, we're going to talk about the halalness monster. Now, this terrifying beast scared poor local angler Louis Leduc, who was on Victoria Island, and he dubbed it the halalness monster. So great name, Jean-Louis. So anyways, he was fishing, and he heard this splashing in the water behind him. And then he heard crashing through the bush and saw this foam-infested, hairy, tall creature smelling of some kind of bizarre seaweed slash axe sort of spray-like stuff. That apparently this character quite had a stench on him. And this creature had also seaweed all over it, and it had a big red head. with mutant gurgling foam all around it as the creature screamed aloe something, jumping through the bush. right behind this guy. So of course Louis said "Sacre bleu" and ran for his life, and as he turned to see while running if the creature was on him, he then realized it was just an over hairy Punjabi guy going for a swim. So this guy had actually went in behind the Victoria Island. He was on one side. The guy had already been swimming out there for the other side, and he had just came along, so he wasn't there that long. This guy finished going through swimming through this mutant prophylactic water system loaded full of this filthy slime and all kinds of stuff. So this poor Punjabi guy's just going for a swim on a hot summer day here, sort of stuff like this. He comes crashing out through these sort of bushes. So of course, the Jean-Louis on the other side, right? All he sees is this furry sorts of stuff and this sort of wild sort of red sort of thing with all the foam around it, right? So I mean, certainly understandable why sort of that occurred. On the other hand, though, some were suspecting that this could have been the first sighting of one of these half-man, half-Bigfoot warriors that Trudeau's supposedly creating. Here's a simulation of one supposedly. Right. So they carry emergency poutine with them, and they also hide Joe Louis and a stash of Labatt 50 inside of their nice red hat there. They're a bit over hairy. They definitely need the silk in there. So Trudeau will have to work on the formula on that and get them a little bit less hairy and stuff like that. But anyway, so that's the updates with Trudeau. We don't know anymore what's going on, but these halal warriors might be out there, so be careful. But isn't that hilarious? So this poor guy goes leaping for his life, thinks it's some kind of, Bigfoot monster or something like this, right? It ends up just being this slightly over Punjabi guy that obviously hadn't taken a bath in a while. The craziest story I've ever collected. I love it. Every time I think I find the best one out there, there's always a new one to top it, and this one's on the number one on my list, the halalness monster. I'll never be forgotten. Great stuff. So anyways, we're going to start off here with mermaids. The case for them, and nothing a lot better than the idea of mermaids, especially with long gold hair and blue eyes. With one like that, I'd be good to go. Elizabeth Montgomery sort of looking, that would work perfect. Sort of stuff like this. We have this depiction down here by Dar there. This is sort of a gang of a freshwater mermaid, and she's relaxing there, having a cocktail sort of thing, and the gang's all there. Serious stuff. But mermaids have been depicted since ancient times here, as you can see in this early sort of depiction here, and reported all over the world by some of the most astonishing sorts of group of witnesses here. Here's ancient, like, cave paintings even showing them and stuff. Thousands of years old. I mean, absolutely fascinating sort of stuff. I've researched this since a child. A lot of people say all kinds of ridiculous stuff out there, about different things about mermaids and the belief in them or not belief in them and this sort of stuff. But to tell you the truth, there actually is some very intriguing, bizarre evidence that sort of, I'm not even going to mention them all here. There was quite a few I could have went a lot more through, but there is some bizarre, intriguing evidence that there's certainly something out there that causes these sightings sometimes, and there seems to be more than one kind. There seems to be like these sea ape sort of ones where they're definitely dugongish and sort of different. Even explorers had mentioned that some were quite ugly and sort of more furry and stuff like this, but they don't seem to be like dugongs or manatees. They seem to be sort of slightly different here and stuff like that. There's also seemingly like some kind of unknown rays, sort of skate-like sorts of species of fish. They're very strange that almost fit in this mermaid-like sort of category, as well as a strange sort of creature of the Black Lagoonish sort of mermaids. Also ones like the Ninjin, or these giant sort of blue ones and stuff like this. And then the typical sort of ones that we've had even a sighting in the Rideau Canal. Manya, she had green sort of hair and a bit slimy. Fascinating, this Rideau Canal sure has a lot of bizarre sightings over the years, from everything from giant sewer rats to a shark. I mean, the list is there's a lot of strange stuff. 90-foot mahogany sea serpent, sort of seals, walrus, and many other sorts of strange things. And the one and only prophylactic beast, which will be talked about another sort of a time, and absolutely a true sort of thing, but fascinating sort of thing. So anyways, we'll talk about that another sort of time. Fake mermaids are many, and sadly, like this silly one below, although he makes a great 2-rod tip up for ice fishing there, right? So if you balance him on a stick, and he can shake 2 rods at once, so very useful, right? He's also, we did an experiment with him and put 2 rods in it, so if the rod went to the right, we asked the same questions that a government officials were asked. And according to public surveys, so far the mermaid monster man gets much higher percentage correctly to do the right thing over any of our politicians. Also, one of them thinks this mermaid looks a little bit like a Bieber, and another one said Don King. Especially Don King, I could almost see that when they're a little bit with the same wild hairdo there. So maybe Don King was the sort of the inspiration. They should send that to him as that'd be funny. He could bring it down to the ring and stuff like that. Something like that. Sort of stuff. I'm not sure. I don't mean to be. I presume he's still doing it. I haven't heard of him in ages, so I don't really know what his background is right at this moment. But anyways, all kidding aside, pretty funny photo. There was back in early times, because they knew people were interested. They nearly stay about mermaids. Some of them would try and do this. They'd take a fish and then sew like a monkey or different sorts of weird stuff. But there's many of them that are way too not explainable through these sorts of methodologies, and we're going to go through a lot of strange stuff, including the most fascinating evidence. And mostly this all started on me ages ago, and I have to thank my good old friend George again with a fascinating tale of telling me out in Poland and stuff like that he knew somebody. They were out on this sort of shipping sort of stuff, and they used to do like commercial netting and stuff like that when he was a younger fellow, and things like this. And sometimes they would draw up out of the water these fish, and they had spears in it, and he swore that mermaids were real and that these mermaids made these spears. And I had never heard of this at this point in time at the time, and stuff like this. This was many ages ago. So I started researching into it. Lo and behold, it's all true, and it's quite common actually. There's a lot of fascinating evidence in even museums and all kinds of weird stuff of extremely strange sort of design spears that are found like literally thousands of sort of feet down below the surface, quite often drifting by in nets and stuff like this. So extremely sort of stuff. Strange. Mermaids come in a large amount of looks, from cutie pies like Mercy here to syringes and sing you to your death. Some cute, some gruesome, freshwater versions, as I was saying there about the green-haired one in the canal and stuff like that, right? So a lot of different versions out here. Now, this one here, one of the Creature of the Black Lagoon one, this one here was pulled out by these fishermen, and this thing's actually inside the net and reaches out. I've seen, fascinatingly, on a few other sort of interesting films that claims it's a mermaid that was filmed underwater, this same sort of hand. So if these things actually do have any sort of reality to them, this one particular sort of group is very much like the Creature of the Black Lagoons sort of thing. I was in a lake in BC that actually has these kinds of reports of a guy that looks exactly like this sort of thing. I investigated sort of stuff like this. And also this has happened in the Ohio River, Lake Erie. There was this sort of mutant sort of guy that looked like him. So even in freshwater, sometimes this variety comes up. So it's an actual official sort of variety out there of a mermaid where there's evidence of it from ages ago to modern times. So it seems like if it's real, this may be an actual one of the sort of more slimy like species, sort of stuff like this. Now here's another one. This one reminds me almost like some guy from the clan that had too many beers. You can see this, but this strange sort of thing was claimed to be a mermaid. It's certainly not any species I'm familiar with. It does remind me though a little bit of like a skatish ray-like family, possibly even some kind of strange unknown species of sharks. Some sharks are rayish-like and stuff like this, but they actually had killed and was able to spear this sort of thing, and they and subdue this strange creature, whatever it was, right? Sort of stuff. Here is a fascinating film, okay, from in California in the 1970s, that it is extremely hard to believe that it was a human in a suit. This is one of the few things I would ever even bother. I mean, this is such a silly subject to me. It's extremely hard to deal with, right? But there is some bizarre sorts of weird evidence out there that is very, very mystifying, and sort of, you can't just push it under the carpet whether I'd like to or not. And this is one of these films. If this was a human in a suit, they have the ability to propel themselves like 8-10 feet out of the water. They can make maneuvers and bend their body around in contortions and do stuff that is extremely, and I mean extremely hard to believe that a human could do this. I've swam out of the water and flew up to scare somebody at the side of a boat for a laugh. I mean, I didn't fly 8 feet out of the water, and I'm not a big, hefty guy, and I can swim very fast. I could swim since I was a tiny, tiny child, right? Sort of stuff like that, and I took lessons and all these kinds of stuff to get better at that sort of thing when I was younger, and this sort of stuff. And so, I mean, certainly, like, I mean, and I've watched tons of people fly out of the water trying to do similar, like, stuff, and I've never seen any human being that could be able to propel themselves like that, like what you see in this fascinating film. So if you want to look that up, you can usually find these things, like, I forget the name of some of these, right this second sort of stuff. I just wanted to cover loosely about it. You can find these things quite often on some, look up mermaid videos and stuff like this, and eventually you'll sort of find it. It's one of the more common sort of ones that they show, like supposed real mermaid ones. But this one actually is an authentic film. It's been around a long time, before the CGI stuff and stuff like that, and is very convincing. Out of all of them I've ever seen, there's only 2 others that are sort of in this realm, and one's even more convincing, with another one that might have something to it. But the most convincing is, we're going to go on about George, or more of these deep water finds and stuff like this, sort of stuff like this. So, see, here's one of these spears. These spears have been found all over the place, from waters all across, it doesn't matter where, across in Europe and stuff like this. These same kinds of tales in North America as well, and stuff like this, of commercial fishermen drifting their nets down sometimes thousands of feet below the surface, and all of a sudden reeling up fish that some of them are still alive with a spear that got stuck in it. I mean, there is no possible way that a human swam down 2,000 feet below the surface, makes these bizarre weapons that isn't known to be belonging to any sort of culture out there and stuff like this by archaeologists that have looked at a lot of these. They're not recognizable by any particular sort of group out there and stuff like this. They're depicted in every continent in the planet sort of since the beginning of time pretty well, sort of stuff. So that's another sort of a thing, right? So these things are quite interesting, where you actually have people going out in commercial trawlers. They're dropping their nets out in deep, deep oceans, and all of a sudden they reel up a spear with like a fish with a spear jammed in it because the mermaid probably got nervous and when the net scooped by or something, bad luck, whatever, right? And the thing grabs it. So occasionally this happens. And there's so many of these examples worldwide that it's absolutely fascinating. So here this crazy story George tells me is actually true, right? So here are these... this one here back in the 60s on Main Island, she was sort of filmed and photographed quite often, seen sort of things. So at least she's a better sort of my idea what a mermaid should look like. Sort of stuff. Like, I mean, I'm sure I'd feel sorry for the green-haired one there, the poor canal lady there and stuff like that. I'd still be very friendly with her and stuff like this. But but out of the two is like for visual appealing, anyways. Certainly, this one here must have been a much more sort of a palatable sight than some of those previous ones that we just showed you, sort of stuff like this. Now, here's this bizarre one here. I mean, this thing is a real wild sort of mermaid. So these two Punjabi characters here of some sort, whatever, right? This is from the 1800s, and this thing looks absolutely bizarre. I mean, she's got, you know, a fair set on her, sort of stuff like this, and seemingly a bra of some sort. So that's interesting, and some kind of weird Catholic, like, sort of a thing on her possibly, or something, some kind of blessing maybe or something. But her face looks sort of almost weirdly apish to doggish, sort of. So very, very strange, but interesting sort of creature. The poor lady, she doesn't even have any arms seemingly, or if she does, they're sort of weird, hidden in there that I'm not seeing. But anyways, quite interesting. This one was filmed by a bunch of tourists, and when you watch this, I would say it's at least one of the ones out there that you know what I mean, are worth sort of looking at, sort of where it's interesting. That's all I can say. I mean, you know, some of these, I wouldn't say it's the best one out there, but I wouldn't completely dismiss it as total fabrication. It looks to be a live, very unusual sort of creature. It does look mermaidish like, and certainly swimming like a mermaid would, and definitely this thing is not likely sort of you know what I mean, like, it's not likely one of those sort of something explainable of the typical sort, and it certainly doesn't look like a human in a suit likely. So I mean, very interesting anyway. Here, although not a mermaid, was one of Trudeau's reported to be half-man Bigfoot warrior advisors there. So you see this one on the left, and apparently this advisor had said, "I told you, Trudeau, the budget cannot fix itself." Budget, yeah, I need more of the budget. Make sure I have enough money for a zigzag, phonetically that would be spelled Labatt Sagon. and then the advisor apparently had said, no, Trudeau, not your crack budget, the country's budget. You zigzag head. So you know, so sadly I have only listened to these Stalin copied beasts here. Yeah, you know, if Trudeau would listen to them instead of, yeah, you know what I mean, listening to some of these other wacky advisors and stuff like that, and staying a wee bit less off of the zigzag here, we think it would be quite a good improvement. So stuff like this. But here's some more here. This one was in a deep underwater film filmed in this French, and you actually see this spear in a fish. I mean, absolutely fascinating, kind of intriguing, like, sort of evidence. You wonder how somebody could have faked this, went down that depth, and they got this strange spear, and all of a sudden the fish is alive. Like, I mean, pretty unusual. This weird blue one here, so I don't know what their problem was. Obviously, they're having a bit of a rough day there. Maybe sort of was hanging around with Papa Smurf too much or something. One of those ninjas there or something, right? Not really sure about that one, but pretty more of these sort of you know, pretty strange sort of a version of them, but there's many of these blue kinds, so I mean this certainly could possibly be a real one. Now this mermaid was found in Kosovo, and so the police actually were involved in everything, and this is what it actually, this skeleton body they found, so nobody's written much about it since, so nobody knows if, yeah, you know what I mean, what was this, some kind of fake plant put there, or what's really going on with it, but fascinating sort of a creature. Here's another good film. You see this sort of mermaid-like creature, and she's flying through the surf and stuff like this. This one, though, could be easily a human. If somebody's a good swimmer and stuff like that, it could be that this is a human one. So I'm not too convinced with this one. I'm 50-50, like on the, it's not bad, and certainly they're an excellent swimmer and that sort of stuff, but it's not convincing enough, sort of, it's on the fence. This one fascinates me. This is in a canal, okay? It's called the Elizabeth Canal, and it's, you know, and this very bizarre sort of film. These people were just filming inside this canal. They were going along, you know, taking a little trip down it, and it has these fast water chutes, so it kind of looks like a Rideau Canal, but much faster water, sort of like you know, you can see even over in Quebec they have a thing like that. What's this, Lac Philippe? They have these sort of like faster chute-like canal-like sort of system where the water's moved is constricted in this smaller channel, and it goes through sort of fast. And you actually see this bizarre creature seemingly coming and following their boat and getting closer, and they didn't even realize it was doing this because they were just filming and they noticed it after. But it looks like somebody's trying to chase them up, and at the last part of it and stuff like this, at first it looked to me like some possible ray-like creature because it seemed very flat-like in some of the sorts of stuff like this, but definitely some kind of live thing. It doesn't look like a piece of garbage or weird stuff like that because it seems to be trying to move faster than the current's going. And it does seemingly some lifelike things that likely it is really something there. And the danger of this and the fast water and how long that they're doing it and everything sort of seems interesting, that not likely it's a fake person down there, sort of thing like that. I doubt it could be a drowned victim, sort of, because the way it's moving and stuff like that seems to be alive, sort of stuff like this, and does swim like a mermaid. Here's an ancient depictions of mermaid ages ago. A lot of skeptics claim that Hans Christian Andersen, I mean, that's ridiculous. There's ancient ones thousands of years ago showing the exact same sort of stuff as how he sort of depicted them. So I mean, that's not real at all, but just another skeptic sort of things that they use quite often. This one is very impressive, only to me for a couple of reasons. This was filmed up on the English coast and stuff, and these guys are up on this cliff. You can find this one, it's a popular one. Probably many of you have seen it and stuff like this, but freeze it again and sort of analyze and watch. And it's interesting, it sounds like as if they said something or whatever, and then all of a sudden this mermaid hears them, okay? Now, what's weird about it is, this is an extremely dangerous spot. There's underground currents and tidal stuff coming in and out, and all this kinds of weird stuff is going on there. And you would have to, on your stomach, then rub against all this sort of wild, sort of jaggedy rocks. Clams would be on there, all kinds of stuff. The way the creature moves, the speed, and the way that they dive into there seems very massively risky for any human to attempt in such a dangerous spot like that. It'd be so easy to make the wrong mistake, clonk your head, and it's all over, and now the gimmick's done, right? And now you have a dead person sort of thing on your conscience too, right? Making the fake video. So I kind of find this sort of interesting, one where there's a bit of weirdness to it that makes me wonder a little bit what's really going on here, because it seems fairly difficult for a human to have done that easily. Like, they'd have to have something on their stomach maybe to prevent, so it wouldn't hurt you, like because you see them, they move in a very sort of fluid like thing, and quite quick in how the mermaid sort of reacts and stuff. It's seemingly lifelike-ish a little bit, where it seems odd if a person's acting or in a suit sort of thing. So I'm on the fence of this one, but yeah, it's certainly one of the better ones. This film clip here is the most convincing evidence I have ever seen personally of a mermaid ever in my entire life. Way more so than any of the descriptions about them or different sorts of ones, you know, ancient records about them, everything. This film is so fascinating. You watch this mermaid at one point, she does these sort of contortions and stuff in these dangerous rocks all over the place. She's flying, contorting way up out of the air, but there's one spot that she does this leap that is massively huge. You can tell by the size of the mermaid compared to the rocks around it that obviously the rocks are bigger than her in length, width-wise across, and sort of stuff like this. So if you add this leap that she does, it seems to me totally impossible that a human could have sort of done some of these maneuvers. The next thing you see is finally at the end that this creature actually, after a mass length of swimming very fluidly and fast under the water, comes up, and you can see this sort of brownish hair, sort of figure-like lady sort of looking thing. And it is, out of all the ones I've ever seen, to somebody in a suit to be able to accomplish the stuff you see on this film is extremely hard to believe. Extremely so. So, I mean, if you did, whoever did this, you're a friggin' genius and the most amazing swimmer I have ever seen, and how any human being could leap that sort of leap in one shot like that. I got to give you credit. You must be, you know, massively sort of on some wild stuff to be able to make leaps like that. So anyways, whatever lady did that, I mean, you're in the most astonishing shape and the best swimmer that would make Phelps super jealous and stuff like that, or anybody else. I mean, so wild stuff if it's a fake. Otherwise, I have no what to tell you, because I mean, it's an extremely convincing film because of some of the maneuvers seem to me totally near improbable that a human could have accomplished easy, like without massive amount of sort of, because you're, even when she's flying around all over the place and stuff like this, there's jagged rocks over there and all kinds of, like, I mean, it's surf coming in every second, pounding you up, and to be able to leap such great distances and the weird stuff and the contortions is astonishing. So I mean, very sort of hard to believe that yeah, you know what I mean, that's a human in a mermaid suit. But whatever, we'll leave it out on the fence, and certainly not enough to prove to anybody, but I mean, it definitely seems to have merit compared to any of the other ones out there. It's the most convincing I've ever seen, you know, sort of thing to it, eh? But I mean, now here for you know, besides that though, you know, like there's many other sorts of stuff of these deep water sort of things. There's a lot of fake documentaries out there where they claimed they made it look scientific, you know, in a world of this or that, and sort of like showing mermaids supposedly real. But they took parts of real things. It is true about the spears and stuff like that, but a lot of this stuff was made after for like a TV promotion, sorts of stuff like this and that. So anyways, it's fascinating. There's some in museums from the 13th century in the Philippines, and all kinds of stuff like that out there. There's a lot of examples and some pretty weird stuff. So I don't know what to say about them, but I can tell you that for sure there must have been, at least at one time, some kind of creature that sort of has caused some of these kinds of sightings. Too many famous people and too much weird evidence of these spears and stuff like that. I mean, they don't have to be human. They could be some kind of intelligent sea ape of some sort, or some weird thing where they have some kind of intelligence to a certain degree where they know how to make primitive sort of weapons or something. But whatever the case, absolutely fascinating. Next, so I just wanted to show you a few more unicorn ones there. I know critics claim all about narwhals and this sort of stuff like this, but I mean, so here this 10th century coin, you can see proves otherwise. I mean, there's these always the same depictions worldwide, all over the place. I mean, exactly way before these Vikings were ever doing these kinds of trade and stuff like this. These ancient sort of depictions of them, 400 BC here, this one here. This one's fantastic. I love this one. This one's a super early one here. I forget which one that one was. It was like 400 or 500 BC too, something like that. And but I mean, you can clearly even see the rings inside the unicorn's horn, stuff like this. I mean, so absolutely, that was like a monsteros, as they called them. And it was a particular kind of one that possibly even Alexander the Great might have even written, sort of thing like that. A lot of different sort of mentions of this particular species, and sort of this particular one was very horse-like. Like, as you can see here, thousands of year-old paintings here. Critics say always rhinos, as you can clearly see. I mean, people in ancient times, they were depicting them very clearly. I can clearly see that's a rhino. It doesn't look anything like a sort of unicorn, right? So these skeptical answers are sort of not really have much reality to them, sort of thing like this. Here, some of them are interesting. You find occasionally some that where they have these reverse horns on them and stuff like that, sort of thing like that, and unusual sorts of other ones I've seen. So there was different species, and this is the thing, is that this is why some people think these things are myths and all this kind of stuff, but they're actually, all of them were hunted out at early times, most of them to extinction, and only some sorts have made it to further into the 16th, 17th, 18th century seems to be about the last reliable sorts of reports. But I'm going to show you later, if true, maybe the last known photograph of a real unicorn, sort of thing. So absolutely fascinating. Anyways, here's another ancient one here. You can see, very interesting. Boy, that guy's got some messed up arms there. Serious stuff. So he looks a bit not doing too well. Here's one, another one from 400 BC, and you can see riding a whole group here where 3 of them are not unicorns, they're typical horses, as you can clearly see, and notice how much he makes them the same as him, except he's slightly a bit more bad boyish, looking a bit darker. But this bad boy has this beautiful twisted unicorn horn coming out of him and stuff like this. So I mean, how people keep saying they didn't exist, I mean, it's ridiculous. They're in cave paintings all over the place, every culture. You can't find just, almost all fossils are never a full fossil. It takes quite often years for them to figure out even what the creature looked like. So these ridiculous suggestions that they all seem to, imagination right away, they could find either some kind of fossil that confused them or any of this kinds of stuff, and they put it all together and made the creature always the same from this cave to that end of the world. It's not feasible. It's much more feasible. There was some kinds of species of them. People heard of these early legendary stories as they passed along from place to place over the centuries, and that's why they kept getting rarer and rarer each time new people would hear about this, and a new place where they had these sort of creatures, they would hunt them to extinction, and they use their horns for these medicines and stuff. So whether the creature had real properties to it or not, and it was another unicorn-like species, but not really the authentic one that would cause the cures, it doesn't matter. All of them went down because of this sort of thing to it, right? Here's ancient depictions in France, art caves, thousands of years old, same thing, another strange unicornish-like one. Here's a fascinating one from the 1400s here. Now, back in these early wars, what these guys would do, they had photographers, except the guy would do these art battles sort of stuff like this, and they had to depict exactly what was going on. Then they'd run over to the general and tell what's going on, so that way the guy could keep abreast of what's, you know what I mean, happening with the battle at that second. And so these guys would paint very quickly and on the draw. Now look at clearly here, you can see their leader, this guy has a unicorn with him. You can see the unicorn horn sticking right out of his head, and the guy's got this armor to protect around it, and sort of stuff like this. It's got a face armor on it and stuff like this. But you can see that the unicorn horn is inside. It's not actually part of the armor. It's inside the thing going in, and they got the armor built around it like a hole sort of thing. So absolutely fascinating, because these depictions are almost always 100% accurate, because when they do them to report to the battle-like guys, and they'd get in big trouble if they weren't accurate. So I find this sort of a convincing sort of a thing. I'm never exactly sure when this art piece was done and stuff like this, but I mean, if it was one of the ones that it's supposed to be, then I mean that's a very interesting sort of a thing here, where this art piece is depicting one in a battle here that is a famous battle sort of right, and like I said, because it's supposed to be accurate, then you have to sort of take it like that in a face value sort of way. I mean, there'd be no reason for the guy to make a unicorn in there if there isn't one. So, sort of thing. So, anyways, it's just another sort of interesting sort of proof they probably did exist. But here is this one's reported photo of the last known unicorn in Mongolia. Isn't that spectacular? So apparently this beautiful unicorn here, something like what George seen, except his was black. But I mean, that sort of stuff. And most of the people I've talked to, they were black ones, sort of thing. But this one here had a darker sort of tinged in horn, right? Absolutely stunning. I mean, sort of thing. I mean, if this could be proven that that really is from Mongolia at that turn of the time, I would be a very large fan of it, because I doubt in those eras they would have been able to sort of do it that well, sort of like this to a thing. And considering it's supposed to have belonged to some kind of sort of outfit where they had a few of them sort of on exhibition, this could actually really be one. And I mean, if so, that's the most astonishing sort of a thing ever. So absolutely very interesting, you gotta admit. I mean, it's like I said, you can't take this sort of stuff as 100% evidence, because I can't prove whether or not this photo really is from the 1800s. But if it really is truly from the 1800s and from Mongolia's reported, I would say that's an extremely interesting sort of photo. And certainly you can tell, like, if you were sort of royalty people showing these things off, they got all these little things weaved in it. So this was like a captured one, sort of. The horn is absolutely fascinating, sort of, right? And it looks like it's built right into the skull there, sort of. Very, so I mean, if it was 1800s, I doubt that they sort of be able to sort of be able to do something that good. So I would then tend to think that this possibly may be the last really known photograph of a real unicorn that ever existed, right? This may have been one of these Montserrat species, as sort of matches a lot of the earlier descriptions of these European ones, and sort of like this were their horse like. But anyways, a fascinating sort of thing. I hope it is. I would love this. I mean, I would be very thrilled to find out that I think this creature actually sort of did really 100% exist, and you could finally prove this sort of thing. It'd be fascinating to see the negatives if there was such a thing existed or whatever like that, but absolutely interesting. And next show there we'll do more of a history of Sasquatch and werewolf, along with early dragon records and some other sorts of stuff like that. So anyways, we just thought we'd give you a little bit of entertainment here, and look at some of the interesting sorts of stuff about the mermaids and stuff like that. There was a lot more I could have done on this end, on the unicorn sort of stuff. But the thing is I just wanted to make it a little bit less of a show sort of stuff like this. But I just thought it was very cute, some of these things, and I do find it fascinating, these tales, including from my good old friend George there, sort of these fascinating tales of these and photos worldwide of strange spears found inside of fish and other things way deep in the oceans, when it would be impossible for a person to dive down that deep. the fish is quite often alive and stuff like that. That's extremely intriguing, sort of bizarre evidence. So there may be something actually to mermaids. My mind doesn't, it's very difficult to accept such a thing. But I mean, I'm a fair person, and I mean, I can't ignore sort of interesting evidence that you can't just wash under the carpet like that and say it's some magical fluke that each time some fish was able to survive for hundreds of miles, it drifted from some guy that speared it in some shore somewhere, and now it's 2,000 feet down the water, still alive, and somehow these people catch it. Like, I mean, these things wouldn't make any sense, right? So, since these things are well documented and there's a lot of proof of them, that's, makes you wonder. And certainly my buddies here, the unicorns, anyways, I hope that really is one, because, geez, I'll tell you, that's an amazing, astonishing creature. Such a thing really actually existed. I hope they really did, because it certainly shows from all the evidence out there, ancient, like I said, all kinds of native tribes that would have them wear them as necklaces around their neck and all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's just too much to be all sort of imagination. So there had to be some reality to this creature originally. So anyways, stay tuned for some more shows, and hopefully you enjoyed that, and bye for now.